And it's now time to take a look at what's happening in the world of business. The Rand had sessions of gains as recent positive economic data fueled hope that the global economy will soon recover. The Rand and gold were also under the spotlight, and a lot has been happening this week. So for a look at market indicators and more, we're joined by CEO of Weaver Investment Management, Owen Khumalo. Thank you very much for coming through, sir. Let's start first with general market performance. How are things today?
Well, the market has been flat today, Colin. In fact, we've hardly risen above 30 basis points since the morning, and the market will be closing in about 15 minutes. So, yeah, it's been a flat market across the board. Financials, industrials, and resources have not really risen that much today.
Well, I mean, like looking at the performance, are stocks recovering at a sustained levels? I know when you look at high frequency data and you see the green arrows pointed up and the red arrows pointed down, is this really concerning?
Well, I think it's indicative of the volatility we're seeing in the markets. And the equity markets are very volatile at the moment because there's a lot of news coming out as we come to grips with the projection or the projectile of this pandemic. So on a daily basis, we might get news that, well, the numbers are going up in terms of the infections. But then the next day we get news that there's advancement or the development of a vaccine. So the markets tend to react. So it's market trying to find a level to settle. But generally, in the last 3 months, since the market bottomed around mid-March going towards the end of March, the market has actually been up over 45%. So we have seen some recovery in the last 3 months to 3.5 months. And we not at the levels where we were when the year started in January, but we are just about 3% down from the start of the year. So we have seen some recovery, but in the short term, there's a lot of volatility.
Yeah, everybody has been asking me, how's the rand doing? And I said, I don't want to answer that question. I mean, even in the studio here, everybody is curious about the performance of the rand. Is it trading at fair value, given that it was trading at 14 rand before the lockdown? And coming to where we are right now, what are we seeing?
That's a very tricky question, Colin, to call the performance of the rand, because there are a lot of factors that affect our currency. But what we've seen in the short term is that the rand is strengthened against the US dollar, but also that's on the back of a weakening dollar because of what's happening in the US. You see, the infection numbers, COVID infection numbers in the US have been going up, and over the last 48 hours, we've seen daily infection rates of above 60,000 cases. So the dollar has been weak, so correspondingly the rand looks stronger. But besides that, we also have seen that for the first time in 17 years, our current account is actually showing us a surplus. So that has been good for the rand as well. It has reacted positively. Inflation numbers are also down on the back of a decimated oil price in the last 2 to 3 months. So it's if you look at the performance of the rand in the short term, it's actually one of the best performing emerging market currencies in year to date, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, like this week, so many people are saying they are impressed with the 16, hovering around the $16 rand mark against the dollar.
Yeah, no, it's an impressive performance. We're looking at 16.70 to the dollar today, and you mentioned that not long ago we had 14 rand to the dollar. So we could see us going to those levels, but it will depend on a number of factors. But there's some positives working in our favor. So we seem to have shrugged off the sovereign downgrades from the rating agencies. The expected bond flows that we were thought to have to come through because of the outflows have not happened to the extent that most economists were projecting. So that has saved the rand. But I think also as the markets settle and risk returns to the market, and we start to see foreign investors coming into our bond market and our equity market, the rand should strengthen even further, even though it has strengthened now, but in the last 3 months, we've seen quite some significant outflows out of our equity markets and bond markets, with foreigners leaving our markets.
Now, looking at gold, I mean, it has been holding steady. Just very briefly, we see that it has breached the $1,700 mark.
In fact, gold is trading above $1,800 per ounce. So again, this is fear-driven. So when there is volatility on the markets and anxiety from investors, they tend to pile money into safe havens, and gold is perceived as a safe haven asset, and that has been driving the gold price. And we've seen that driving some of our gold stocks, our gold mining companies on the JSE as well. So yeah, it's fear driven. Once risk returns to the market, the gold price should start to return to normal average levels we're accustomed to.
Well, there's so much to talk about. I wanted to bounce the TFG story with you as well as SAA during this week, but unfortunately we've run out of time for the markets rep. Thank you so much and have yourself a lovely weekend.